Hey guys, we just finished our class and I wanted to come back to this one that I skipped and give you an explanation for it. If you don't want to watch it, it's okay, but for those of you who do want to know, this is number 15. It's on page 47 in your text. And it says to graph the piecewise function. And this function has three parts. In order to graph it, I am going to have to do some tables just to get some points. But before I start that, I do want to tell you one thing about these pieces of the function. So let's first focus on this first piece, which is the x minus 1 when x is less than negative 1. Because that does not involve an equal sign, when we graph, we're going to use an open circle. And I'm going to show you exactly what to do with that. Okay, in this one, when we have a 0 when x is negative 1, because that one does have an equal sign, we're going to use a closed circle. And then on this one, which is the third piece of the function, when x is greater than negative 1, again, that's not an equal sign, so that's going to be an open circle. And we're going to need those when we do our graphing. Okay? So first I'm going to focus on the first piece of the function, which looks like this. F of x equals x minus 1 when our x values are less than negative 1. So I'm going to make my xy table, and I know that my x's need to be lower than negative 1, so I'm going to use negative 2 and negative 3, just because those are the next two after negative 1. So I will evaluate this function at negative 2. So negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3, and that would be the output for negative 2. And then negative 3, we're going to get another output, which would be negative 4. And so there are 2 points related to that first function. And I'm going to keep my colors going. That is still the first piece of this piecewise function. Okay. The orange piece is pretty straightforward because it gives us the actual value. The function is f of x is 0 when the x is negative 1. So if we let x be negative 1, the output is already defined for us. So this point would be negative 1, 0. And that is the yellow part of the function. I'm sorry, the orange part of the function. These drive me nuts. Okay, the pink part. We need some x's that are greater than negative 1. So I'm going to go ahead and make another table. X has to be bigger than negative 1, so I'll use a 0 and a positive 1. And then evaluate that pink function for those two values. So when 0 is your value of x, you would have a negative 0 plus 1. So that's just going to give you a positive 1. And then when your x is a 1, you would have a negative 1 plus 1, which would give you a 0. And there again, I have created some points for my graph using the third piece of this function. So now I'm going to graph all these points, these things that are in the coordinate form. So for my yellow function, I have a negative 2, negative 3. I'm sorry about that text message if you heard that. So -2, -3 is going to be back 2 and down 3. So -2, -3 is right there. And that's this point that I just graphed. Then I'm going to graph this one, -3, -4. So I will back up 3 and drop down 4. And you can see that function starting to take shape. And then I'm going to graph my orange one, which is right here. Right there, -1, 0. So I drop back -1 and I don't go up or down. I'm just going to put that right there. That's just a plain point. There is nothing more that needs to be orange. So I'm going to go ahead and color that one. All right. And then I have these two pink coordinates to graph, which are right there, 0 and 1. So no movement left or right, but climb up 1 point. And then 1, 0, so over 1 and don't move at all. So those 2 points get graphed as well. So I have graphed my 5 points. And then I'm going to go back to this open closed thing. We know that the yellow and pink functions need open circles. And let me go ahead and color my lines as well. This is the yellow function down here. And then this is the pink function that's starting right there. So the yellow one says when x is less than -1. So at -1, I'm going to go ahead and put an open circle. Oops, that's not what I meant. X is -1, so we're going to put one. Something isn't right here. Oh, yeah, right there. Because I want this to be a line, I'm just going to open that circle at this -1 point. X is -1. And then I'm going to draw my function in there, which is a straight line. Okay, it has a positive slope. That's consistent with our function. Then at this one, we're going to start again at -1 for x, so that's going to be right there with an open circle. And draw that with a negative slope because that function has a negative slope. It's a -x. So we're going to bring that down this way. Let me try that again. I'm trying to get a straight line and it's not working out too well. But something like this. This would be the graph of that piecewise function. Again, I am not worried about this one. You don't need to fret about it. But I did want to at least give you the explanation if you wanted it. And hopefully that is not too terribly confusing, but I would not worry about these. If you can evaluate functions, you're going to be just fine. So I'll see you soon for class, and I hope you have a really good day.